Healers, we are getting some very exciting changes coming this week that I don't think enough people are talking about. So, in today's video, we're going to kind of run through the list of changes, any of them that kind of have to do with us healers, so all the healer changes, and then the augmentation changes because I think they're kind of funny to talk about. But, like I said, I think there are some very exciting things that are kind of being snuck under the radar, or like not enough people are talking about them because this is a very small list of changes and they're coming at a very weird time in the season. But with the whole time gating of gearing being lifted for the most part, I think now is a good part in this, or a good point in the season where a lot of us are going to be looking to alts or looking to kind of give some other specs a trial run for future seasons to see if maybe we want to swap our mains or something. I think these changes are a great way to do that. So let's go and start off with, like I said, we're going to talk about augmentation just for like 2 seconds. So augmentation, basically, they've kind of revamped how the spec works. So now it does a lot more damage than it used to, but it gives a lot less support than it used to. And it's funny because they didn't think about how their last tier set that gives them damage bonuses now got so much stronger with how they've buffed the damage. And this kind of makes me think anytime that like any healer that you guys play gets a rework, I wonder if we should be looking back to like old tier sets to see if that breaks anything. I don't know. I thought that was kind of funny. Anyways, moving on to the actual healers, we got preservation. And once again, I always like to talk about augmentation changes for the sake of preservation because it is so reliant on the success or failures of augmentation. I don't think Prez has to worry about augmentation as it used to. But preservation is very underplayed right now. I think we all know this. I think it is in that category of healers of the worst healer, which I don't think it really is technically the worst healer. I think it's just the most underplayed healer, and whatever the worst of the two pre-specs is in any form of content where they just get criminally underplayed. And I think a lot of people forget how good it actually is just because you don't see it compared to its counterparts that often. However, preservation statistically is just lacking, and there is kind of a reason other than all of its downfalls that not too many people are playing it, and Blizzard saw it in the data. So here we have some pretty excited changes to kind of breathe some life, yeah, pun intended, back into the spec. So for starters, they're just going to give it a blanket healing increase, 4% across the board. That's your dream breath, that's your like shields, your echoes, like everything blanket 4%. We take that. I think it desperately needed it. Oh, I should have pulled up the Warcraft logs like chart, but it desperately needed a blanket healing increase for its rating performance. I think it doesn't stand out in what it does for a raid comp as much as something like a disc priest or like a holy paladin. Like they have clear identities that they bring to a raid, whereas preservation kind of like blurs the lines between like Mistweaver and Resto Druid, kind of, or Resto Shaman ish. Um, but uh their if their throughput is lacking, they're just going to fall behind the things that kind of fill the same throughput role as them. So having them kind of be brought back more in line across the board is very good. And then also, not to mention, for their Mythic Plus, I do think that preservations do fall off toward the end game in terms of all the throughput healing specs. So if you look at Disc Priest in its own little bubble, its own little power word shield, because it can help people survive deeper later end game content, and then you look at every other healer that can't do that, they are in the lower category of being able to put up with the throughput required to kind of make up for the lack of shields, if that makes sense. So they are giving them a lot of targeted buffs that are going to help their Mythic Plus performance, I think, a whole lot. So first off, we have Living Flame. It's getting a healing increase of 30%, and this is very important because in Mythic Plus, they do play the Chrono Warden hero talent tree, which plays a lot around your healing Living Flames. And I do also want to mention that this is a big buff to one of the most important things in healing. I think this season has taught us so much about healing and what's important from a healer to bring in damage mitigation. If you can mitigate any amount of damage, that is so important, so much more important than your healing. And then burst healing. How much shock healing can you have in your kit? Because the damage happens so much and so often that you need to be able to burst 1 health bar up in time, burst 5 health bars up in time before the next big burst. Think about the Sacred Toll Paladins, the pop shots, all of that in Priory. You need to be able to burst up health bars, and Living Flame is what's going to help you do that, especially with their talent called like something Spark, Living Spark, I think it's called. Life Spark. So your reversion has a chance to make your next living flame instant, 1.5 times as strong. Very big shock heal, very important buff for their Mythic Plus performance. I think this is absolutely excellent. They needed this. What did I just click? Anyways, they have needed this for so long. And then on that same note, Spirit Bloom. You see Spirit Bloom, this one person, which is this is one of the top logs of a Mythic Plus dungeon. Spirit Bloom does a lot of healing. For 62 casts, though, this is a lot of cast for an AoE spell with a cooldown in order for it to only be your fourth overall at healing. But it does a ton of healing, and it needed to do more. This kind of has that Shayloon's Gift effect, where we've seen this in its OG state, where literally you would 5-man cast this and your whole party would be lay on hands all the way to full health. Now in its current state, it doesn't necessarily do that. It can chunk health bars up to full, but it is like a shell. It's a ghost of what it used to be. However, Mistweaver with Shayloon's Gift, you can actually modify how much it heals with like your healing bonuses. Preservation doesn't really have that. So you're kind of just getting what Spirit Bloom does at its face value. It just has to do as much healing as a Spirit Bloom does, unless you have some echoes on people to kind of amplify that. But yeah, so seeing it get a healing bonus, a big one too, a 20% buff, that is also very much needed for their AoE healing. These changes are exceptional. I think the spec is going to start to come back. I think we might actually start to see it in some higher end keys like the 18s, 19s, as opposed to, I think right now it's capping at 18s, where other specs are like capping at like 20s and stuff. So I'm excited to see if anyone is willing to play Preservation. I think that's kind of like the main thing, is are people willing to play it? And then also on the same note, Echo's base healing did get increased by 100%. I'm pretty sure this is just like when you Echo someone, they get a small heal, but you see just how much 244 casts of this accounted for. Only 1.48% of this logs healing. So that one's not as exciting, but you know, a big juice up to their spot healing and to their shock healing. Living Flame does have a cast time, but like I said, a lot of times it's used as a big shock heal. Okay, moving on from Preservation, that is a big thumbs up. I think that is life needed to be breathed back into them, and I think they're getting it. I'm very happy. Very notably, though, we're skipping over the Priest Healers, Monk, and Druid. I think that's all of them. We're skipping over these, and I'll talk about that at the end of this video, but let's talk about what we are getting. So Holy Paladin, as you see, Elsmere is literally keeping this spec alive, and honestly, I think he's right to do so. I think this spec is putting up better numbers than I thought it could. Like, I've been playing Elsmere's build, and I am shocked, no pun intended this time, at how much it pumps. Like, it absolutely pumps healing and damage. However, these buffs are to their Lightsmith hero talent tree. If you remember back last season, the Lightsmith Avenging Crusader punch kick, you know, ancient teachings-esque style play that Holy Paladin had, a lot of people loved it because it's literally the best part of Mistweaver, but baked into the lore of Holy Paladin. A lot of people hated it because you're not shock healing like the lore of Holy Paladin. So they kind of gutted it coming into this season. I say kind of, they absolutely gutted it. And I do think that these changes are in the right direction to kind of bring it back, because right now, no Holy Paladins are playing Lightsmith. Like, no Holy Paladins. If you ever see a Holy Paladin out in the wild, they are not playing Lightsmith because it has been absolutely axed at the beginning of the season. So what are they doing? Blessing of the Forge healing is increased by 15%. This is when you are in your wings or in your Avenging Wrath or Crusader. Anytime that you spend Holy Power, it's just going to echo it and kind of do like a little bit of extra healing. That's cool and all. Sure. That's cool. That's just like extra passive healing already in your big window of healing. That's okay. We take that. But the really juicy buff that I think we're kind of sleeping on is Hammer and Anvil. Back when I was playing the Vintage Crusader Lightsmith build, and maybe some of you guys did as well, this talent was the most impressive part of the whole hero talent tree, in my opinion. Hammer and Anvil is the talent where when you throw your judgment, if it crits, it's going to pulse out a very large healer. Back then, it was a very large heal. This was absolutely gutted coming into the season. It's like, it used to be like you would pray, like, I am planning to throw 2 judgments during this heal check. If only one of them crits, the whole party lives. If neither of them crits, we all die. You know, like, it was very impactful. And you could slam a judgment during your beacon, everyone is full health. It was so much healing. But like I said, it just got axed coming into the season. So seeing it get buffed again is very good. Now, I'm kind of sad they're not buffing it way more back to like its old glory. But I will say the most devastating thing was when you were playing this build, the Lightsmith Avenging Crusader build, and your hammer and anvil just did not crit for like a whole minute straight, and you just didn't get the value from it. That was devastating. So maybe having that much power baked into RNG is probably not a good thing. So you know what, I will tip my hat at the devs and say good on you guys for buffing it, realizing it needed a buff but not buffing it to the point where I probably would have, because I am wrong in that case. But very cool. Like I said, Holy Paladin is very good, and I think the devs see that. However, they also see that no one is trying Lightsmith, so they're just like, giving it some love, being like, hey, maybe you guys want to explore a bit of this, see if this has something going, just like Elsmere found, the caked up build in the other build. But yeah, moving on to Resto Shaman. Now, this is some very exciting stuff, because at the beginning of this season, once again, this was a hero talent tree that saw some success in the past, in the very recent history, but they just gutted it. Like, they just absolutely gutted it. In fact, I'm pretty sure this hero talent tree, which is Farseer, by the way, right now, Resto Shamans are basically all playing Totemic because it's so good, so synergistic with their hero talent tree, or with their tier set. Farseer was exceptional even in the PTR until they gutted it like mid PTR. They basically said, hey, we're going to nerf how much healing your little summon dudes do, which is what this whole hero talent tree is built around. Every time you Riptide, you can summon you have a chance to summon a little guy that comes out and helps, and then every time that you proc your Undulate or cast Unleash Life, you're getting guys to come out and help. So, they basically nerfed them very hard, and then said, now it's going to, scale off of your mastery. And no Resto Shaman wants to go mastery. So just dead in the water. Farseer has been dead in the water. So this is some life breathed back into, once again, another dead hero talent tree. So Elemental Reverb increases the healing of Riptide by 20% instead of 10%. This is doubling the healing bonus that you get from Elemental Reverb. This is a very strong thing because it already gives you an extra Lava Burst charge that's bigger single target damage, and it gives you an extra Riptide charge, which is very good in this build. Like, Riptide is bread and butter, and you can build a whole entire build around it, and something like Whispering Waves if you wanted to, because you're going to get that much more Riptides out. So in a raid environment, this is exceptional. Your Riptides are going to be cranking healing. It's going to be a lot like, kind of reminiscent of like what Resto Druids do with their rejuves, or what Mistweavers are doing right now with the Renewing Mists. Hopefully you're going to see some big Riptide healing from Farseer or Resto Shamans. Maybe, some people are going to experiment with it. Outside of that, Maelstrom Supremacy now increases the healing of all of these spells: Healing Wave, Healing Surge, so your 2 single target heals, Wellspring, which I'm pretty sure not many people are taking right now, Downpour, which is taken, but mostly in the Totemic build, because it procs, you can proc it in your Surging Totem, which is very good because you can move it and stuff. And then Chain Heal by 25%. So this one is actually very big. And this was 15%. So it's a net 10% buff to all of these spells if you take Farseer. This is actually very big because I guess we'll get into it soon. But with this build, you can basically get your You can get your tidal wave stacked up to 4 times, which is whenever you Riptide, which you're going to be doing once again a lot more often with this build. You're buffing your next spell. So now you can buff your next, if you Riptide 4 times in a row, you can buff your next 4 chain heals by now 20% on top of the tidal waves buff. So it's actually like a very significant buff. I think this buff is like being snuck under the radar, but this is significant. However, keep in mind when we're reading these that this hero talent tree is competing with Totemic, which also kind of enhances your chain heals a ton too. So it's, yes, this is exciting, but then if you think about the opportunity cost of not playing Totemic, I don't know. We're just gonna have to see if these make some redemption for Farseer. Moving on though, that one, by the way, that one is probably huge, probably a huge buff to all these spells. Offering from Beyond now reduces the cooldown of Riptide by 3 seconds as opposed to 2. So you're gonna get more Riptides. I think, yeah, this one, you're gonna be getting more Riptides every time that your ancestors go away, which is pretty cool, because you're now shaving 1 more second. But this also, I think people are gonna sleep on this too. Where is it? Ancestors have a chance to call another ancestor for 6 seconds when they go away. Who knows? You might start playing Ancient Fellowship so that you see more ancestors so that you shave off even more time of your Riptides. I think that could be a pretty spicy build. And then maybe we finally see a Whispering Waves build come to light. But that's cool, but it kind of just, we need this to be overpowered for it to be exciting, is kind of the thing that I'm thinking about with the offering from Beyond. Moving on, Primordial Capacity now increases the maximum mana by 10% instead of 5%. Yeah, increasing your mana by 5% is almost nothing. You see, most healers don't even go for the 5% like chest enchant, because it just 5% mana is literally nothing. It's like 1 or 2 casts to some specs. So yeah, of course they weren't caring about that, but now 10%, maybe you start to care about 10% bonus mana. But this is something very interesting. So Hydro Bubble is kind of like Resto Shaman's shield that they can put on. They can't put on people, but Farseer puts on people. So every time that one of your ancestors goes away, which mind you, they could play a build that gets more opportunities for these ancestors to kind of fade away or come into existence so that they can fade away. But every time that those go away, they're going to leave a bubble on one of your allies. This bubble was, 1, very small, and 2, it decays. Let's see, where is it? Where does it say that? It decays over its existence. Here we go. Hydro Bubble surrounds your target by protective water for 10 seconds. This also decays fully over its duration, meaning that if, say, the ancestor like fades right before some damage happens, okay, that bubble was at full, capacity. But say that like this bubble sits on someone for like 8 seconds. Now you only have like a 20% hydro bubble, which that bubble's already small, so it's basically nothing. It's literally nothing. So seeing that it's gonna now last 15 seconds means that it's gonna decay slower. It also means that it's going to be a shield on someone for longer, given, if someone doesn't take damage for a whole 15 seconds, then sure, they'll have a more chance of having a little bubble on them. But then, as like I said, it's also going to be just a bigger shield. So if you do get lucky and you do get that Hydro Bubble to time right as that damage is coming out, it's going to be a bigger shield. And if you're unlucky and that shield gets put on someone a couple seconds before the damage comes out, then that bubble will be even bigger because it's going to decay slower. So I don't know. Once again, I don't think Hydro Bubble is anything to break the bank about. It's not Power Word Shield or anything. It's kind of like the Strength of the Black Ox of Resto Shamans. But I do think that this is very cool. These are all buffs that needed to happen. That I don't think any of this is something to be like, wow, this one buff is the reason why I'm going to play Farseer or Resto Shaman. But I do think if you are someone who plays Resto Shaman, these are something to be very excited about. In fact, if I was a Resto Shaman main, I would be so excited to come to Raid Night this week and to play some Mythic Plus next week. So I don't know. What do you guys think? Are y'all excited for any of these changes? Like, I don't think these changes are intended to get anyone to main swap. I think these changes are intended to breathe some life into some things that were slowly dying off or fading from existence or relevancy, like some hero talent trees or some specs that are just like getting left behind by some of the shinier, more fun specs, I guess, or less frustrating specs, I should say. But like I said, there were some very meaningful healers left out of this list. Notably, both priest specs. So Disc Priest is ruling the roost. I think that's a saying. Correct me if I'm wrong, but absolutely ruling the roost. Other than Elsmere, you just don't see anything other than Disc Priest, because I've said it 1,000 times and I've been roasted for it in the past, but I'm going to stick to it. Shielding is not healing. It's mitigation. You're preventing damage from happening, not healing damage that has happened. So when you're able to put so many shields or put gigantic shields that often on a spec, all of a sudden the key level that is possible for your spec or for your group to survive is pushed up that much further. So like if another group just would get one shot through all their defensives in a 20, but Disc Priest can help your group survive the 21, then all of a sudden they're just doing something that no other healer can do, and it doesn't have to do with healing, it has to do with shielding. However, It's kind of shocking that they're not seeing any changes. I know they've been like kind of nerfed down to the ground a bunch, but they're still just living at the top and not even caring about anyone else. But also Holy Priest. Holy Priest not being seen here tells me that the devs are happy with their buffs, which I as a player, having played Holy post buff, am very happy with where it's at right now. I think it is actually very, very good. Very good. I just think that it's overshadowed by its Disc Priest counterpart in Mythic Plus. But Holy Priest and Raid is also pumping. So Holy Priest is in a great spot, and I do think that they don't want to keep tweaking it if they think it's at a good spot, because they don't want it to kind of slowly become overpowered. You know what I mean? They've done that in the past where they keep tweaking something that no one's playing, and then all of a sudden everyone's like, wait, but we weren't playing it because we didn't want to, but now we have to, you know? So I like that Holy Priest isn't seeing, anything here. Mistweaver, look, I'll say I do think Mistweaver's in a very good spot. I'm able to do some high keys with multiple different builds if I want to just meme around. However, I will say one thing that still just gets under my skin is the last nerf to Jade Empowerment, the Crackling Jade Lightning, how it does less single target damage and more like cleave damage. No one wanted that. No one wanted that. Just please reconsider. That's all I have to say. But guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that you guys enjoyed my rundown of these changes. Like I said, I am very excited. You guys know me. I am just an optimistic person. I will find the good in changes, and I will probably complain about some of the bad, but I'll try not to. However, let's drop WoW for a second. I want to talk to you guys. If you've made it this far in the video, let me talk about something that's not WoW related. Me and my wife just watched a movie. She's been wanting me to watch this movie for a long time because she said it's very good. It's La La Land. If you've watched La La Land, I had to bring it up here, even though it has nothing to do with this video, because we just finished it like an hour ago, and I am like perplexed. I have not stopped like staring at the wall, just thinking about life. It's like it was such a good movie, but I'm so mad at it. I'm so mad at it. Do you guys have any movies like that? Like any recommendations for things that just make you think for days after you've watched it? I've heard of a couple good animes that are like that, where they just make you think. What are your recommendations? Because I don't know, I kind of like this. It sucks because I can't stop thinking about it, but it's kind of fun because it's making me think about things. But anyways, thank you guys for watching this video. Sorry about rambling at the end. But guys, I appreciate you so much. Make sure and hit the like button if you like this video, if you like getting little updates like this on what's coming. Also, let me know what you're most excited about of this list of changes. For me personally, it's that they're nerfing the augmentation. No, I'm kidding. Probably, I don't know. None of these are like too exciting to me, if I'm being honest. Nothing's really too exciting except for maybe the hammer and anvil. I love this hero talent, but thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video. Until then, take care, guys.